Hello gainers, Ralphie here with some fitter philosophy, sharing the fitness, sharing the philosophy, and at this moment in time we're focusing on the philosophy more than the fitness. My fitness regime does continue, but it's been rather sluggish recently for a reason that I will come to in a forthcoming video. So let's walk and talk. I'll do the walking and talking. You sit where you are. Get myself out the bulrushes here. These are the sort of things that grow beside rivers because they need plenty of water. They're very handy to have because they stop riverbanks eroding, which is important. And as you can see, they're doing a mighty fine job. Now, in my last review, I was discussing the human situation of lying and how it impacts on humans, where these lies come from, why they're there basically, and the effects that they can have. So it's identifying the lies. And to summarise the last video, I touched on the very worst possible lies, the ones that impact us the most, and the ones that are often most invisible to us, because we do expect children to lie to us because it's frankly entertaining. When they do, it's quite amusing because they're very naive and they haven't a clue about sophisticated lies. But it's also a kind of useful little practice for when we're getting lied to by adults, particularly family members or friends or people we think are friends. And then there's the lies our employers tell us about how we are valued by the company, etc, etc. When they mean it, they show it, not when they tell it. Simple as that. And they're lies that we're told by professional people who should know better, but they reflect the age in which we live. So in fact, when we go to the doctors, if we've got a problem, they will give us a prescription to address the symptom of the problem rather than examining the problem itself. For a very simple reason, there's a lot more money to be made for the pharmaceutical companies. And I don't mean that as a criticism, I mean that as a practical observation. Simple as that. It's basically looking after business, and that's the way it is. And this is part and parcel of getting experience with lies, and how in fact they can help us when we recognise them, when we're familiar with them, when occasionally in our less experienced times of our lives where we've experimented lies with ourselves, and then tripped up over them, and then embarrassed ourselves or got ourselves into difficulties, sometimes serious difficulties, in relationships, in business dealings and such like. But the worst lies, the very, very worst lies, it's not what the newspapers tell us, because we know it's a fabricated agenda. It's a story. It has its own purpose for a very small minority, and frankly, that's real life, and I'm not criticising it. You know, the option is, do you choose to buy newspapers? Do you believe what they say? Many of the older generation do, and more fool them. They have no idea how they are indirectly attacked by this situation. But note that by far the worst lies, excuse me, we step up here. The very worst lies are the lies we create and tell to ourselves for ourselves. Let me explain why. Lies can include kidding ourselves on that we have talents that we don't necessarily have, that we're smarter than we actually are. That's another self-delusory lie. That we are in fact in a loving relationship with someone who really cares about us, when we're not. So these are lies that have not been told to us by other people. They're lies we're telling ourselves. And because we're telling these lies to ourselves, automatically, because they're coming from us, who are we going to trust? Who are we going to believe? We're going to believe ourselves. And that's a big mistake. So many people shorten, curtail the quality of their lives. the value of what they can achieve, not only to themselves but to others, through the insidious continuity of lies that are self-imposed over time. And what makes them worse is these lies don't remain static. They can morph over time. They can adjust to the circumstances and perpetuate themselves. And we really have to beware of these lies, because they are the most subtle, the most exotic, the most convincing of lies, but also the most damaging. Because if we can't be honest with ourselves, and it's the removal of lies that allows access for honesty, if we cannot be honest with ourselves, we will not be honest in our lives and be absolutely truthful to ourselves. Now, truth, the power and the influence of truth is often underestimated and undervalued. Truth is an amazing situation for self-understanding and freedom, and we know we can't get to the complete truth. We'll never have 100%. We understand that. But if we can knock the truth barometer up from, say, 55 to 60%, that's one significant difference, particularly over time. The more truthful we are about ourselves, the better. Maybe as regards our appearance, our level of ability for certain skills, the amount of time and effort we should put into ambitions, personal ambitions. And this is another lie. People who confuse personal ambition with ambition that's been imposed by society. In other words, you know, work hard, play hard, work harder, you'll get more, you'll have more, you'll be more if you give more time to someone else's profit production. It's not true. And often it's people with experience of life that have listened to their own circumstances and learned from their own mistakes. These people have got valuable perspectives to offer and should frankly be listened to. Having said that, there's no fool like an old fool, and there's plenty of old fools out there, lots of them. You can see them at the newsagents with their whiny voices, complaining about the weather. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too dry, it's too wet, focusing on the negativity. With their newspapers, talking about the disingenuous flannel on television, talking negatively about the people around them who will prepare to communicate with them, talking derogatory about a younger generation, simply because they're different and they don't want to communicate with them. You know, it's true, there's no fool out there like old fools, and they come from all walks of life. Don't assume that fools are a particular socio-economic group or an environmental circumstance or ethnic background. You know, it's all one, really. And one of the skills I'm going to end this by giving you a practical piece of advice, and it's a mindset. I'm going to help you develop your mindset to examine your own circumstances more honestly and more dispassionately, so that you can begin to address the... I'm going to have a seat, excuse me, a lovely little seat here. So I'm going to have a seat now to finish off this review at the riverbank. Never a waste of time to spend time with nature on a bright and sunny breezy day. Just sharing, and I'm not lying to you, but you know that. But I'd conclude by saying that here's a little exercise to help you, and it's, you know, it's the simple things that work the best. A little bit of meditation, contemplation, detachment, silence. It's amazing how effective these can be. So I want you to close your eyes and just for a minute, just like in Google Maps, when you're clicking out and you're moving away from a fixed geographical point and you're starting to see more and more of the planet, and then finally you're out in space and you're looking back in planet Earth from a distance. And then imagine yourself now as part of that, how tiny, how small, how insignificant, and yet at the same time part of it and of value to it in small but significant ways. What can contribute, what can we individually contribute to reality? Day by day, week by month by year, how can we in our own lives just do one drop at a time, a little bit of good, a little bit of positivity, a little bit of honesty, a little bit of truth. And it's really in drawing back from our personal circumstances, being in the thick of it, and looking back as if an alien life form back in that individual little entity that is us on the planet, and saying, you know, let's add a little more truth today. Let's add a little more honesty today, because in doing so, truth and honesty displace lies. Even if they don't completely displace them, they make them visible to ourselves. When we are living more honest, truthful lives with ourselves, it is by default, not by design, but purely by default, but ultimately we can influence that design. Quite simply, we get more out of life. Not more happiness, contentment, more wealth, more goods, more cars, more houses, more holidays. Not all this peripheral flannel, but the sense of self. And particularly when you're in a silent, detached place, it seems so simple. And it doesn't take long. 15 minutes should do it. But if you do it every day, it'd be amazing how it all adds up over time. And we simply move to a better place in our lives with which to live better lives. I'm Ralphie, I'm done and dusted here, down at the riverside, watching the ducks, but I'm not feeding them because they're fat enough as it is. See you soon, gainers.